Yes, so it's a novel, and it started out as what somebody told me was called autofiction. So I was writing, well, let me take you back a little bit further than that. I have two dogs. They were rescued from a shelter, and I've had them for almost 12 years. We think, you never know the ages, right? And I've always had dogs. But these two in particular have a lot of extra needs, let's say. And so Sully is the shepherd mix. He's very timid, afraid of doorways, afraid of everything, people, basically everything. Whereas Cash is more assertive and is not afraid of anything. So, I've been trying to do all the things these past 10, 11 years. Fix them. What can I do to help you? Dog obedience, all of that. And one day, Sully was sort of bouncing towards me, which he doesn't typically do. He just lays out in the grass and enjoys his happy, quiet life. But on this day, he was bounding towards me and his ears were flopping and it was so cute. And I love his tail. He's got this big bushy black tail and it was, going back and forth. And I stopped and I looked at him and these lines, I've described it so many times now, but it's these lines downloaded to me in his voice. And he was saying like, it's okay. I am okay. You have to stop worrying about me and just accept me the way I am, like I have with you. So it was kind of like that. And so I took it and I wrote it down. I mean, I enjoyed that moment, first of all, but it doesn't usually last more than 30 seconds. And sure enough, like within a, matter of moments, he was gone and back in the yard and enjoying his laying on the grass. But that kept coming to me. Like I started writing more poems and poetry in his voice, sort of as a way for me to understand what he was going through. I mean, obviously I wouldn't be able to understand that completely, but trying to figure out like how I could make his life better after all these years. We'd given him everything we possibly could, but he still wasn't free from those fears, which made me really sad. So I just kept writing. And then I would write a little bit more, and then I'd write like a longer scene, and then maybe a little bit, I'd add on another scene. And then by this time, I had met another writer in town, and I was telling her about my stories, and I was doing the self doubt of, well, I'm not really a writer. And she says, well, it sounds to me like you are a writer. So I joined her group session. She's a book coach, and she had these larger group sessions where there were, gosh, I think there were 10 of us. And it was online on Sunday nights. And I learned everything about creating that outline. And so I started to create the outline based on all of these notes that I had in these little poems. So that's a long-winded way to tell you that's how I came to write this book. But initially I was writing it as in my story, not through the voice of my dog. And then I thought, how could I make this interesting for the reader? Not that I was even envisioning a book at that time. It was just a story for me, story for my dogs. But then I started to think about what would it look like if it was through the voice of my dog. But then I knew I had to recreate scenes like a rescue mission and different things. And so I thought, okay, I think I need to create the protagonist as a different person than I am. And that's what I did. I started over and I recreated the protagonist. Her name is Renly, but Sully and Cash are in the book as themselves. So it's like a mashup of fiction and nonfiction. And so one chapter is through Renly's perspective, followed by a chapter of Sully's perspective. So he doesn't talk to humans, but he does talk to other dogs. So that's kind of how the birthing of the book, I suppose. But I never expected to be sitting here talking to you about my novel. But wow, what a trip this has been.
Absolutely. I completely understand that feeling of wanting to put a story out, starting it just for your own self, and
Mm-hmm.
then the idea of could I write a book, and that imposter syndrome feeling that, well, I'm not a writer, who am I to completely get that. But I
Mm-hmm.
love that you still, moved forward and that you found the support needed to help you get it accomplished and then to put this out there for people.
I
You
don't
know,
think that I would have done it without them, to be
yeah.
honest. I mean, she's a fantastic book coach. She's now a friend. And I think that without seeing what the other writers were going through as well, and some of their frustrations and what was holding them back from writing their stories, I knew I wasn't alone anymore and I wouldn't have to do it alone. So I kept joining her book session, like her coaching, group coaching, sorry. I kept joining them session after session. She's like, "Well, Holly, we've done this already. That's okay. I'll just keep going." And I just kept expanding until the point where I felt comfortable enough to step away and keep going on my own. But I've still joined a couple of her groups just because I enjoy it so much. And writers are just such friendly people who are willing to share everything writing craft, and so
Absolutely. We support each other. I get that.
Mhm.